But let's move on to the battle for the midterms and take a close look at where things stand in this week's edition of The Battlefield.
The polls are shifting. The map is changing. The fight for Congress is on. This is the battlefield.
Matt, I think this is the first edition where it's really not clear when you look at all the indicators going on from the past week, where things stand, which side actually achieved an upper hand over the course of the last week.
Let me tell you the first thing that really stuck out. This week, the New York Times and Siena College released a poll in 6 key Senate races. And it shows Democrats winning in North Carolina and Maine. But what jumped off the page for me is that Republicans are only up 2 points in Alaska, 2 points in Iowa, 3 points in Ohio, and tied in Texas. Those are states Republicans should be leading comfortably. This is a flashing warning light that we need to pay attention to.
Now, in writing up those results, the lead New York Times pollster Nate Cohn said that at the end of the day, Republicans' home field advantage still gives them the edge to hold on to control of the Senate. Is that how you see it at the end of the day?
No, you got to dig a little deeper in these numbers. The generic ballot in each of those states was far higher for the Republicans than what the actual candidate numbers were. And not to get too wonky in here, these are also weighted numbers. Some of the raw numbers in those states were actually Democrat plus 1 or 2. It's early June. It does not decide elections. But if we don't pay attention there, we are going to lose those seats and we're going to lose the Senate.
So you're saying it may be tied in this poll right now, but that says that down the line, it should be Democrats pulling into the lead in those states.
The check engine light is on in the car, and if we don't fix it, the car's just going to stop working.
All right, what's your second one?
Second one, I like to look sometimes at these individual districts because I think some of them can give us a lot of information. New Jersey's 7, Thomas Keene's district. Now, Cook has this race as a toss-up. Trump won it by 2 points. Democrat Mikey Sherrill won it earlier this year with 2 points. Keene missed over 100 roll call votes. He had been MIA for months, and he just disclosed this week that he was hospitalized with depression. Now, this is the type of district that Democrats need to win, and polling in early June by a Democrat firm showed that the Democrat was winning this race right now. What I'm paying attention to is, did 4 months off on the campaign trail fundamentally weaken this incumbent in one of the most competitive House districts in America?
I think we both feel a tremendous amount of sympathy for Representative Kaine in this situation. I would contrast a little bit with the primary result that happened in Colorado's 8th district this week, where the far more progressive Manny Rutinil won in a primary. And the evidence shows that when you're in a swing district like that, a far more progressive candidate will do about 1 to 2 percentage points worse than a more moderate Democrat in that same district. Does that kind of become a wash for you with what you're seeing in New Jersey?
No, the path to our victory, to Republicans holding on the House, is so narrow. It's like trying to drive a semi truck through the head of a pin needle. I don't think it's a wash.
All right, what's your third?
This is by far the biggest story of the week. The Supreme Court changed campaign strategy overnight. It is not getting enough attention. And in case you don't know what I'm talking about, the Supreme Court struck down limits on coordination between parties and candidates. It's going to lower the rates they get on television ads. This isn't just a legal ruling. It changed the rules of campaign itself. It realigns the battlefield. It shuffles the deck. But let's park that for a minute, Matt, and take a look at how this impacts the dashboard.
All right, let's take a look at that dashboard. And first, we'll take a look at some of the structural indicators from the week. And as you can see here, Donald Trump's net approval rating actually improved by about 2 points, although that's mostly a statistical anomaly. I don't think it's really worth paying close attention to. Consumer sentiment was even. Trump's net approval among independents, which is a proxy for swing voters a little bit, it's as good a proxy as we can get. That actually got worse for Trump over the past week. The generic ballot has also recovered to its baseline. Taking a look at the probabilities of chamber outcomes, you can see that there hasn't been any shift in the prospects for a House takeover by the Democrats. But there was a very important move this week, the Alaska Senate race, moving from leans Republican to toss-up category. No major change in the governor's races, and the prediction markets ticked up generally toward the Democrats. And finally, let's get to our weekly verdict and bottom line. I graded this as a week that moved toward the Republicans. Yes, everything I just said in the structural indicators and race outcomes would seem to suggest movement toward the Democrats. But I agree with you, that overarching story of what happened to the money race swamps any outcome that you could see on a race by race basis. This is putting far more ammunition into Republicans' hands down the stretch. So for me, this was a week that was slightly tilting toward the Republicans.
All right. So from a Democrat standpoint, you see this Supreme Court race as really changing the game a little bit.
I absolutely do. And look, just to put this into context, I'll tell you a very quick story. When I was a campaign manager for the most endangered Democratic House member in the country in 2012, we were losing. We were getting absolutely pummeled. On TV, we were being outspent by 8-1. It was an absolute crush. But I was able to take advantage of a little known rule that allowed our campaign to work with the committee, the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, and get committee dollars for our ads, but to run them at candidate rates. That's the issue you were just talking about. Again, I don't want to confuse people. This is what the Supreme Court just said, is these committees that used to pay 3 to 10 times more can now pay the same rates that candidates pay. And using that rule, even though we were getting so massively outspent and we were behind in the polls, we were able to put up just as many ads as our Republican opponents, and we eked out that race and won. That is what the Supreme Court decision just did, is it let everyone use that little trick that I used back in 2012, and that erases Democrats' massive advantage. I have, for years, given people the advice, if you're going to make a donation and you're a Democrat, and you want your donation to really have an impact, give to a candidate. Don't give to a committee. Don't give to an advocacy organization. That advantage is gone. As of right now, Republicans have a $125 million advantage. They have $125 million more on the committee side than Democrats. What the Supreme Court decision did this week is it magnified the impact of that money advantage by as much as tenfold. It's like they literally just handed Republicans a $1 billion hammer. That's why I think this ruling has such an impact.
Right now, Republicans take that money advantage, and in those tight races like we're talking about, the ones that we keep looking at, gives them definitely a leg up. Do you see this as a problem in November, or is this just a headline this week?
I think it matters in November. I think short term, this is a loss for Democrats, because it's not just that the Supreme Court just magically, it's like something in Harry Potter. It's like it multiplied the money that Republicans have sitting in their bank accounts. That wouldn't matter so much if Republicans had nothing effective to say with all that money. But this week, Democrats ended up handing them more proof points around the theme that we discussed earlier, that Democrats are just a bunch of scary, scary socialists because we have nominated these DSA members. Some of them are indeed pretty tough to defend. This Daria-Liza Avila Chevalier, who won in New York, is someone who has some pretty extreme views. She attended a party to celebrate the October 7th attacks. She has advocated state ownership of major industries and multiple times praised the Communist Party. All of that will appear in national ads. And there's a track record of this kind of a theme being pretty successful for Republicans. So now Republicans have a message and they have the money to run with it. Short term, it's a clear win. Longer term, what do you make of it? Is this necessarily a bad thing for Republicans, Democrats, or the system?
Look, I think this is actually a great ruling. For somebody who's been working in politics for almost 30 years, Campaign finance is the thing that changed when McCain-Feingold and all those issues and ultimately sprung into super PACs. It just created these other cottage industries, but destroyed the strength of parties. I think the single biggest winner of this long-term are going to be a revitalized party. And I think that's good for America. I think a revitalized Republican, revitalized Democratic Party that can compete and get money changes a lot about how we're going to nominate, who we're going to nominate.
I agree with that last point. Even though this is a short-term loss for the Democratic Party, it does nudge things in the direction of the national parties having more access to the dollars that are currently going to super PACs. Money going to shadowy super PACs is bad. It doesn't sound like it's a good thing for more money to end up in the hands of the Republican Party or the Democratic Party. But it is, in the sense that the parties may be better able to screen out the more extreme candidates like Ms. Chevalier or Mr. Trump. And as you said, a lot more transparency with the money. We know where it's coming from. That is probably, in the long term, a good thing.